Hello and welcome to the outside of my studio on this very hot sunny day. Being a little follically challenged, I have to wear the hat, otherwise my head will burn. Okay, so let's have a look at how I made this image. The dramatic look of this image is down to the angle of view and composition. By using a very low position and looking up, the sky has gained prominence. Coupled with a very wide angle lens and being very close to the subject makes for an unusual result. Okay, so just how did I take that picture? Well, I used this DSLR and a 16 to 35mm wide angle lens. Now, instead of getting very low down onto the ground and so on, what I actually did was put the plants, the foliage, up high, and therefore I had a much more comfortable position for the camera. Let me show you what I mean. So here we go. This is literally a window box full of lettuce, and I'm using this as the subject, and placing it up high like this makes it a much easier job to position the camera. So my camera is going to be positioned about here somewhere. So in order to do that, what I'm going to use is a tripod. Here we are. Just going to get that in probably about there somewhere, like that. Okay, so if I just pop the camera on the top of this tripod, so, and I'll just have a look through the viewfinder just to see where I am at the moment. Okay, so that's a little low, I think. So what I'm going to do is just wind that up with the handle on the tripod until we get to somewhere reasonable, about there somewhere, I think, and we'll lock that off there. Okay, so that's the position of the camera more or less set. What I want to do now is just adjust the leaves. So again, I'll just look through the viewfinder whilst I do that, just to find an interesting place. There we are. I think somewhere around there looks about right. And also I'll make this a bit wider. Just zoom that out. Somewhere around there, like that. So compositionally, that's about it. So the next thing to do will be just to ascertain what exposure we're going to need. Now, I would like to use a very large depth of field. So I'm going to set an aperture of about f16. And then I'll just set a shutter speed to match. So I'm doing this just with the meter in the camera. Just looking through the viewfinder, I can just set those parameters on the camera. So that's f16 at a 60th of a second at ISO 100. Now those settings are going to be different for every day and every situation. So it's just a ballpark really. And I've done all that in manual, so the camera is set in manual, so nothing's going to change. That will become important because what I want to do is probably capture 2 or 3 different focus settings. And then if I need to, I can stack them up in Photoshop a bit later. Okay, so with those settings then, what I'll do is just grab an image and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, that's looking quite nice. The exposure's about right and the composition's not bad. But I'd like a bit more detail in the sky than you can see at the moment. And to bring that detail out, what I'm going to do is use this polarizing filter. So I'm just going to screw this onto the front of the lens. Just like that. There we go. Now, obviously, that's going to change the exposure. So what I'm going to do is just again using the meter in the camera, I'll just have a look and see what that exposure needs to be changed just using the meter in the camera, I'm just going to change that up a little, and I'm just going to drop the shutter speed to a 50th of a second. So with those settings, I'll just grab an image and see what that looks like. Right, so you can see from that there's not a great deal of difference. The thing to remember about polarizing filters is that you can set the angle. So just by rotating the filter at the front of the camera here, I can change its angle, and that will change the effect. So just looking through the viewfinder and rotating that, you can see the change that it makes. There we are. So in that sort of position, it's made quite a marked change to the image. Okay, so in that position then, we'll just grab another image. There. And you can see from that we've got quite a lot of detail now in the sky. And that is just down to rotating the filter on the front of the lens here until you get the maximum change. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is just take a series of pictures, like I said, at different focus points. So I'm going to start at the front here. So I'm just going to refocus that, like so. And then just change the focus and take a set of images. There we go. So with those captured, it just remains to go into Photoshop and do the post-production. So here we are in Photoshop, and I've already loaded up two of the variants with different focus points. So we have this one and we have this one here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just make a stack of those two images. So I'm going to go File, Scripts, come down to Load Files into Stack, and I'm going to add the open files like that, and I'm going to ask it to attempt to automatically align the images for me. There we go, and we'll just click on OK. And off it goes and does its thing. Okay, so this should be aligned more or less with the other file. So if I just turn one off and turn the other one on, yes, that's reasonable. The wind did blow the leaves around a little, so I think that's done a pretty good job actually. Good, okay. So now we've got aligned images. What I can do is just pick on the top layer here, and I'm just going to add a mask to that layer like that. Now that will allow me to cut through this image to reveal the one that's underneath. So if I just turn that off for a second, and I can see from here that these leaves down the bottom here are a little bit soft on that version, and they're a bit harder on this version. So I want to retain this version for the bottom part of the image, I think, and just go through to the underlying image for the top bit. So in order to do that, I'm just going to pick a brush. That's possibly a bit big. Let's just make that a bit smaller. And just make sure that black is selected as the foreground colour. Okay, I'll make that maybe a bit bigger than that. We need to be over large, I think, like that. There we go. And I'll just bring in the back of the other image and just pick the point where I think it will blend well. There we are. That's good. This has gone a bit astray down here, so what I'm going to do is just resize the brush, make it a bit harder, that, and I'll just paint that in very carefully so that we retain that part of the image. There we are. I'm doing this quite quickly. You could take a bit more time over it, but you get the idea. There we are. It's coming up quite well. Okay, so that's with, that's without rather, and that's with. So these down the bottom here are a little sharper. Okay, so with that done, next thing I'm going to do is just make a stamp layer of those two layers. So just click away from the layers to deselect them, holding down the Shift key, the Control key, the Alt key, just press the E key, and this will make a stamp of those two layers. So this layer on its own contains all the information from these two. Okay, so with that one now selected, I'm just going to make an adjustment layer, and I'm going to make a levels adjustment globally across the whole image. So what I'm going to do is just pull this slider in just to brighten up the image a bit. So about there somewhere, I think. That's also added a bit of contrast as well, which is quite nice. So that's with and that's without. Okay. Now again, I don't want this to affect all of it. In fact, I want the sky a bit darker. So what I'm going to do is, again with my brush, I'm just going to make that brush really soft and quite large, like that. And just in the sky here, I'll just move that over there like that, just to darken it down. And you can see that on this layer here on the mask, it has just blacked that top part in. So if I take that off, that's what we had before, and that's what we've got now. So that's pretty good, I think. Okay, so finally I think we'll just select a crop, and as always I'm going to use 16:9. I'm just going to bring these handles in ever so slightly from the sides, like that, and I'm just going to have a bit more of that sky, I think, something like that. That looks quite good. So just click on the tick, and there we have it. The use of a polarizing filter has really brought out the detail in the clouds. And doing this in direct sunshine has enhanced the sharpness of the leaves and added a bit of contrast to the whole image. So I think overall that has worked very well. So if you like watching how I make these pictures, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.